And I was like a 17-year-old kid at the time. And I remember, I was friends with Johnny because he lived like a mile away. And I remember he called me up because Metallica was staying at his house. They just had a baby, him and Marcia. And Metallica was just sleeping on the floor. He's like, they didn't shower for like a week. And he's like, listen, man, can you pick these guys up? Me and my wife need a break. He goes, just take them to the mall. Here's some money. Take them to go get something to eat. We need a break from them. So I went up picking up my mom's car. Dave, Cliff, Lars, and James. I took them to a local mall. We walked around. And then I took them to Burger King. My girlfriend worked at Burger King. I brought these slobs in there. They were drunk at like 2 PM and shit. She was so embarrassed.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here is David and Joshua.
Man, we're all so professional. We have our microphones and we had a green screen. I was thinking about doing one of those for this show too, and I was just like, fuck it, let's just start the show and see.
No, you got a good background with some good stuff on the wall,
Yeah, that's all my pain and toil and years of heartache and heartbreak, and it all looks fancy on a wall, but when you get into what it really was, it wasn't that pretty.
Right.
Yeah. God forbid you have some platinum records on your wall,
Yeah, well, they don't come easy, believe me.
Right.
Everybody thinks they do, and it's funny, Jim, we were just talking to, by the way, David Ellefson here, my co-host Joshua Toomey, and our guest Jim Florentine today, who I think, like a lot of comedians I've learned about over the years, you guys are really funny on stage, and then off stage, there's like a whole other story going on. We were looking at your Wikipedia page, and even the stuff that's on the Wikipedia, I love your comedy show, and obviously when you come out here to Phoenix, we usually hook up and hang out. And I remember my son Roman, he really loved when you were doing I Got the House. That album tour, and he loved that you're talking about how your son was kind of pick it up, being like dad, right? So he starts telling jokes, and he goes on stage and tells all your jokes before you go on stage. Gives your repertoire away, right?
We got a big fight because I'm like, you stole my joke. No, you stole mine. I said that. No, I do an Applebee's joke. No, I came up with that.
Yeah. We had that with Kings of Thrash. We had some band come up and they played Megadeth songs before us. It's like, that's what we do. You don't do that. It's funny in Dunaway's book, the bass player from the original Alice Cooper band, he talked about how I think they might have still been the Spiders. They weren't the Alice Cooper group yet. And I think the Turtles came through Phoenix and they got to be the opening band. So they played all Turtles songs. And they're so excited, and they went into the dressing room like, isn't this great? And they're like, what the fuck did you just do? Like, you don't go play our songs in front of us. That's what we do, So
I remember like opening for comics that I was like, big fan of like a guy like a Nick DiPaolo or something like that. I'm like, all right, I got to be really edgy and be like him, and he's gonna love me when I first started. Meanwhile, he's like, dude, you're doing me on stage. Right. That's my style. I thought I was like, oh, this is going to be great. He's going to love me. And meanwhile, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And that really is it. It's funny, isn't it? You're on a festival or you're the support act, so to speak, or the opening act, right? In whatever, setting we're in. And you're right. It's being yourself and being unique that sets you apart. That's what makes you, because otherwise you're just like a kind of a cheap offshoot of what the headliner is, So, it's funny. I always loved your show, the Jim Florentine show on Sirius. It used to be the Metal Midgets, right? Which I guess is probably not PC now or something.
No, everyone always thinks that. What they said, because I take requests, so I have my email is comedymetalmidgets@gmail.com. Okay. And then the show was called Metal Midgets, and they just go, look, you're saying midgets too much. You got to get rid of one of them.
Yeah, I got it.
So I was like, all right, I'll just call it the Jim Florentine Show.
I'm not changing my email, for crying out loud.
What's that?
I'm not changing my email.
Yeah, I've had that email forever. I use that for my other podcast, so I'm not changing that, so I'll just change the show.
So it's funny. I love your show, and I just kind of randomly catch it from time to time, getting in the car when I'm in town. That's, kind of my time to listen to music. And it's so funny. You and I have the same taste for music. You play these deep cuts, song Evans, side B, album 3, and I love it. I'm like, oh my God, it's like we have the same record collection, whether it's Ted Nugent or, whatever it might be. And in fact, my friend Andy in Italy just sent me Pat Travers, McBain. He was called McBain on the album, not McBrain. And he was in the Putting It Straight album, right? And he sent me one of those clips. And I was thinking about you coming on the show today. I'm thinking, this is like the kind of deep dive shit that we listen to, right? Early Pat Travers, this kind of stuff. In fact, one that really hit me that I really liked is one day you played when Zakk Wylde was sort of transitioning. He was still in Ozzy, but he started his first solo records. His first solo record was an acoustic record, right?
Book of Shadows.
Yeah, it wasn't Black Label Society, right? It was just, and you played some stuff from that. I was like, God, what a great trip down memory lane. That was like, what, 92, 93?
Somewhere around there. I think that's when somewhere, maybe, 93, somewhere right when he joined Ozzy. But it was I love that record. It's really good.
Super good. So, yeah, I love, again, you don't have to do what Eddie Trunk does. You don't have to do what Keith Roth does. You just do you. You know what I mean? And it's a perfect example on the radio playlist.
Well, they let me pick my songs. That's the thing. Come on my own playlist. And I know the guys that listen to the show. I'm the same guy. So I have every one of those albums. I know everybody else that listens has it. So play the deep cuts off of it. Like, shit, I haven't heard this one in forever. And I know they'll know them, as something off AC/DC Powerage. Gone Shooting, something like that. Everyone's going to know that song.
So I wanted to, Jim, when it came out for you to jump on the show, one of the reasons I wanted you to pop on the show was obviously you toured with Megadeth. When David rejoined Megadeth, you were on that tour also with Slayer, and just kind of what were your memories of that, kind of trying to do comedy in between Megadeth and Slayer?
Yeah, well, I did 2 tours. We did also, was it the Mega Tour? What do you say?
A Gigantour we did.
Tour. I did another one later on after that. I mean, the first one was arenas, so that was really tough. Mm-hmm. I had to do 5 minutes between each band. So 5 minutes before Anthrax, there's hardly anybody in the venue. That was actually great. Like they were, appreciative. They would listen. It was almost like doing a comedy club, like a big comedy club.
Right.
But then the second time I had to go on, I went on, I think it was after Megadeth. I know Dave. Yeah, I think I had to go on after
Megadeth, because then Slayer would come on after, yeah.
But no, I did 3 sets, so I don't. Maybe went on right after Anthrax. Anyway, by the time Slayer went on, the venue's full, and this is my 3rd time on stage. I have to do 5-minute sets, 3 5-minute sets. They've had enough of me. They're like, all right, dude, enough.
Well, they're a little more drunk by then too. They're rowdy, right? They're ready to get it going,
Yeah, and I'm like that, I know I'm that drunk guy in the crowd whenever like the local DJ comes up from the station that never plays Megadeth or Slayer, local rock station. Like, you don't even play it, and he's up there making announcements, giving away stuff. You're just thinking they're going to take away time from another song. Like, Megadeth could play one more song if this guy doesn't shut up.
Yeah.
That's what everyone thinks. Meanwhile, the set times are the set times. The MC's not going to go, cut into their time. But as a drunk guy in that crowd, you think that. Right. So I always tell them, I go, listen, I got to do 5 minutes. Slayer's not coming on until 9 o'clock. It's 8:53. At 8:58, I'm off stage. They're coming on at 9. So I'm not wasting anybody's time. You don't like this, go get a beer or go take a piss. And I got to do 5 minutes of jokes. I try to break it down like that. Even then, they'd be booing. The problem was by the time I was going on right before Slayer had the whole stage. So that curtain covering the whole stage. So I had to do it from the soundboard in the back of the venue.
Oh,
that's what I did my 3rd set. So all of a sudden, the big spotlight came on me, and everyone has to turn around. That's right in the front. Like, oh, this fucking guy again?
Yeah. It's like a wet T-shirt contest, but it's you.
And it was sponsored by Jägermeister, so I figured they always had these Jägermeister girls going around with the Jaeger shot. I brought them on stage. I can't. They said maybe they wouldn't throw stuff, and they still did.
It's funny on that tour because technically it was kind of a clash of the Titans, right? It was Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth. It didn't have a rotating lineup. It was just like you said. It was just that lineup the whole tour. But we couldn't use the name Clash of the Titans. Apparently, they had done another movie since 1991, right? And so we couldn't get the name. So Jägermeister was the sponsor, like you said. So it just became the Jägermeister tour featuring Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax. And I remember that was always such a thing. Dave hated playing before Slayer. We've always played before Slayer, even when we went out and did, Lemoore and City Gardens in Trenton back in 1985. And just because Slayer was a band before we were, they, kind of naturally would be given the, that closing slot. But I tell you what, even though they were always co-headliners with Slayer, I always felt like us playing. Was there an opening band on that tour? I forgot if there was. Maybe it was just the 3 bands.
It was just the 3 bands.
Okay. But always that middle slot is always the best slot, because to me, I feel like, look, Anthrax fans are going to stay, especially if they're Slayer fans. All the Megadeth fans, of course, are going to stay. The Slayer fans have to stay because they're waiting to see Slayer. So it's like we got everybody. It was the creamy center, because after we played, sometimes the venue, I didn't clear out because it's Slayer playing, but if you're a Megadeth Anthrax fan and you're not a Slayer fan, you might not stay, right? So to me, being in that middle slot was always the best position,
it's just like a comedy show. The middle spot, there's an MC, there's a feature and a headliner. The feature spot is always the best spot. They have to do 20 minutes. They don't do their full set. They do their greatest hits, and they don't have to deal with the drunk people later on in the show. The headline has to do an hour. So that's the cake spot, the middle spot. Same with the band.
All right, guys, we have a killer Louder Than Life giveaway for Louder Than Life 2025, Louisville, Kentucky, at the Highland Festival grounds. Bands like Slayer, Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson, Avenged Sevenfold, Sleep Token, Breaking Benjamin, Deftones, Evanescence are among over 160 bands appearing over 6 stages over 4 days. And we here at the David Ellefson Show have 6, count them 6, 4-day festival passes for you guys. So what I want you guys to do is go to either YouTube or Facebook, like and share this episode, and then also comment your favorite guest of the David Ellefson Show so far. That will give you an entry into this contest. And once again, it is 6 4-day general admission passes. And there are so many anniversaries and reunions for this year's Louder Than Life. You've got 12 Stones. You've got Accept doing a 50th anniversary, Acid Bath, Cavalera. The brothers are playing the Sepultura record Chaos AD in full. That's worth the price of admission alone. Chimera, Chiodos, Crossfade, Dope doing a 25-year anniversary set. Down, Fear Factory, From First to Last, ICP, Kitty, Let Live, Rob Zombie doing Astro Creep 2000 in its entirety. I saw that once at Riot Fest. It was awesome. The almighty Snot, Spineshank, and don't forget Slayer. You're going to get to see Slayer for free. So 6 4-day festival passes. Head over to the YouTube page or the Facebook page. Comment your favorite David Ellefson Show guest so far. You will be entered, and we will announce the winner on July 21st. Now back to the show.
I don't know if you remember. I think it was on that same tour we played the AT&T Center in the arena down in San Antonio.
That was the first night.
Was it the first night?
Yeah, and I got a bunch of beers thrown at me at the soundboard, and the next night they covered it with a tarp because the soundboard's right there. They thought it was going to short it out with the beers being thrown at me.
But dude, I got something thrown at me, and I swear it wasn't beer. And I asked my tech, Fred Koalo, I said, dude, beer is not warm. Right? Old school English, right? Drink the fucking, like at Donington, drink the beer and then piss in the cup and then throw it at the band, right? That's, true punk rock. And it's just, it came flying up and hit me, and it was like, that's warm. It sucks, and it's dripping down my bass, and I have to Fred. He's like, oh, dude. And the next day at the next show, I walk into sound check, and he's, cleaning my bass up. I said, please tell me that was a beer. He just laughs. He goes, brother, it wasn't a beer. I'm like, motherfucker. So
yeah, they were extra rowdy that night. I remember that.
Yeah. It must have been a Slayer fan or an Anthrax fan or a Jim Florentine fan.
No, it
Fuck
wasn't.
David Ellefson. Fuck that guy.
Look, I had a little advantage because they knew me from that metal show, so they gave me at least a minute or two
Right.
before they had enough of me. So at least I wasn't some unknown guy coming out there. It would have never worked.
What did you end up doing like the rest of your day if you only had to do 3 5-minute sets? Were you just kind of hanging out all day?
Yeah, man, it was like I'm not used to that. You know, Dave actually helped me a lot being on the road and, you know, the downtime and what to do and just, you know, chill and all that stuff. So it was tough because, you know, as a comic, you're usually in the same spot for like 3 nights. And then you don't move. You're in the same hotel. You go back and forth to the gig. And this is on a bus. And, you know, yeah, I'm up at like 9 in the morning. And then it's like I don't go on stage till 7 p.m.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just figured out what to do. I remember someone telling me that if you have to go drop a deuce, because you know, all the roadies, like at 7 in the morning, they go shower and use the bathroom, and they have to start setting up. Like you don't want to go in there. It's disgusting. It's towels. It's just, you know. So they say go into the venue and go to the ladies' room because no one's in there. No one's in the venue at that time, the arena, and go in the ladies' room and use that stall.
There you go.
That's all kinds of cool shit you learn on these tours.
I know. I never even thought about that. I remember the box office woman came in and she was next to me. And I had to sit there for an extra 20 minutes. I had to listen to her conversation. I'm like, there's no way I can come out.
Oh, can I get a courtesy flush? Right. That's from Tom Arnold.
There was one venue, though, in Oklahoma City. It's connected to a zoo.
Mm-hmm.
You know that venue, Dave?
Wait, where was this? Where was it at?
Oklahoma City.
Yes. Oh my God. And didn't we get rained out or something?
Yeah, you guys didn't go on because it was thunderstorms. Every other band went on, and I had to go out and announce that Megadeth wasn't coming on, and then jump on the tour bus to take off because they didn't want, you know, people jumping on the bus. They were so mad. Everyone was booing me. But I remember you're not allowed to curse on stage at that venue. I didn't know that because it's connected to a zoo, and there's a bunch of families and kids there.
No,
And it's $1,000 every time you curse. And
Whoa, really?
Yeah. I went up there at like, you know, 6 o'clock right before Anthrax, and I said like 5 F-bombs. And I got her a stage manager's like, what's your name? I go, what? He goes, you just curse. I go, oh, so? He's like, you're not allowed to curse here. I go, who says who? He goes, that's a rule here. You didn't see the contract? I go, no, I didn't see the contract. So I gave him a fake name, my comic friend Artie Fletcher, and he wrote it down. He goes, $5,000 is coming out of your pay tonight. Meanwhile, I wasn't getting that money. I go, okay, all right. I remember telling Dave Mustaine, he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. He goes, the agent should have told you, but don't worry, we'll just take off. Yeah. So it didn't happen. I gave him my fake name, but I didn't know that. I guess bands get $1,000 a curse at that venue.
Yeah, the
Mustaine said, don't worry about it. We'll charge Ellefson.
That's where that money went. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
They gave it.
It's actually funny. The Lynn Strait from Snot, you know, before he passed away, there was the big incident with him coming out, you know, naked and getting a blowjob on Ozfest, all this other nonsense. He's running from the cops. The cops finally catch up with him. They start to they ask him his name, and he actually told them his name was Dave Mustaine. And he, you know, and you know, so another charge that he got was giving false information to the cops. But you know, and then he passed away.
Fred Durst did that too on Ozfest '98. He got arrested, and he said his name was Dave. So poor guy. And he's already got like a long record, and he didn't even do anything. He's completely innocent. Yeah, you know, it's that venue is it's funny with that venue. We played there twice, and I don't think either show happened. We did that one. And then I think we did did we do the Rockstar Mayhem tour there or something with Disturbed and Godsmack?
Yeah, because it's
rained out again. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Same thing. It's like, so we've, you know, haven't played Oklahoma in like 10 years. Been there twice, but haven't played there 10 years.
Hanging out at the zoo all day, you know.
I remember like a tree fell over on the crew bus and they couldn't leave. And then I think on the Disturbed tour or one of the tours, all the, you know, the motors that hold all the, you know, sound and lights up above the stage, they need electricity to be able to, you know, bring them down. And the whole part of that town was a complete blackout. They couldn't even get the generator started to lower the gear to get it out of there. And of course, it's raining and Jim's swearing and goats.
Someone at the venue told me that Manson was there like 2 years before and he lost money. That's how much he cursed.
I can believe that, but not now. Not now. Maybe the new Manson wouldn't lose that much money, you know.
Yeah.
The new family friendly Manson.
Hey, so I'm sure you get the same question. I was thinking about this. We always get the, hey, when are you going to put that lineup together? When are you putting the band back together? You guys, I know you and Eddie and Don get this all the time about, that metal show, right? And, is there any, I'm sure there's been a gazillion discussions. Have you thought about doing that again somewhere else? If not on TV, even just doing it at, I don't know, opening for Black Sabbath or something.
We tried doing a version just similar to this. We called it That Rocks. We couldn't call it That Metal Show.
Yeah.
We did that for a while, but it just wasn't catching on. And plus, the problem is, I'm sure you guys deal with it. We have some guy on, he's on his phone in his car, and the service is going out, and the audio's terrible and all that stuff. So it just, at the end, we're like, this is stupid. We need to be in a studio to do this.
I don't know if you know this or not, but Rat Skates, right, drummer from Overkill. So he calls me one day because I'm down the shore at our house there in Jersey, and Rat's like our neighbor, right? So he says, hey, I want to do this show. You and me as rockers, we'll get a comedian, we'll get some other guests, da-da-da-da-da, right? So we do a pilot, and we went up into New York City. We shot a pilot for it. JJ French was in it. Vernon Reed from Living Color. We did like 2 sets of guests and put this whole thing together. And then next thing you know, out of nowhere, you guys come out with That Metal Show. And I'm like, are we reading each other's emails here? What happened? And obviously yours hit because you got on VH1. So I don't know who had the idea first, but it was a great concept. I thought it was really fun. And I mean, kudos to you guys because you actually made it happen. You know what I mean? You guys actually got it on the air and made it work.
Well, Eddie was already working at VH1. He was just doing regular interviews with rock stars and hard rock, whatever. So he already had an in. And then, me and Don started doing his radio show, and he says, I'm going to try to pitch a talk show.
Yeah.
So to VH1, because he was already in there, and they went for it. And luckily, I don't know, we were on for like 7-8 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Were you a part of the Axl Rose interview where you guys did it at like 6 a.m. because he wanted to eat dinner at like 4 a.m. and all this other nonsense?
Yeah. I was down in Miami at the American Airlines Arena where the Heat play. In Axl's defense, he didn't know he was getting interviewed. His manager just said, "Yeah, Axl will do an interview," and we're like, "We'll get on a plane. We'll go wherever because he didn't do a TV interview for 14 years on video." So we said, they go, "Listen, we're going to Miami." Axl agreed to do an interview. We're like, "Wow, that's crazy." And then when we got there, they go, "Listen, we're gonna have to do it." His manager's like, "Let's do it after the show." He doesn't want to do it before. He's got his whole routine. So like, all right, fine, we'll go see Gun. Meanwhile, they went on at midnight. They ended at 3 a.m. So now it's 3 a.m. and we're like, all right, where's Axl, whatever? And he's at an after party, like backstage and the VIP or whatever. And then his manager came up to him and he's like, "You got to be kidding me. Why didn't you tell me?" He's like, "I was gonna, but you were in a mood." So he goes, I need time to get ready to go on. So by the time he showed up, it was like 5:20 a.m.
24 hours later.
Yeah, but you know what? I didn't care. It's like everyone's like, "Oh man, you guys must have been exhausted." You know how many times I've walked out of a strip club at 5:20 in the morning back in the day? Got right on a plane, like, "Oh, I feel so bad for these guys." Like, no one's ever stayed up late that night.
Hey, so what do you have coming up right now? What are you working on and on the road or new album stuff you're promoting?
Yeah, just touring. Just out there doing comedy. I do my podcast. I do a podcast. Everybody Is Awful comes out every Monday. And, a radio show on Ozzy's Boneyard. I do that every Thursday. And, just doing a stand-up. I love doing stand-up. You guys, Dave, being in a band, I work by myself. I don't have to worry getting along with 4 other people. All that stuff, it's just me out there. So it's a lot easier. Yeah. I don't have to split the money 5 ways. That's nice.
Yes, indeed it is.
I'm my own boss. I don't have to worry about the guitar player getting a new girlfriend that wants to take over the band. That kind of stuff.
Dude, you're just going right down the checklist. Yeah,
I have
not being in a band.
I have a theory that a lot of musicians and comedians too, but a lot of musicians need to be taken care of. Like they need mommies in their life because they just learned how to play that instrument. That's all they did growing up is just play, practiced. So their social skills aren't that great. And, they get up before school and be playing it just to get, and once they get in a band, they don't really know how to do anything else. They're amazing at that instrument, but they need a mommy to take care of them.
100%. Yeah. They're not skilled at life at all.
Right. I remember living with these musicians, local guys, years ago, and the guy didn't even know how to mail a letter. He's like, "What do I do?"
Yes.
How do I do this? He would take a beer in the shower with him. You know what I mean? Like you need a mommy around. And then what happens is those mommies try to take over the band,
Of course.
infiltrate the band, and then everything gets blown up.
And yet, one time I remember we were on a tour. I think King was opening for us or something, and me and Dave were looking out over the dressing rooms were upstairs. You could kind of look down, kind of like a House of Blues. And everybody on stage was on their phones, just like this, right? Right. So can't figure out how to mail an envelope, but yet everyone can like go on social media, check their status, right, and do all their updates. So it's like if you have a phone and a guitar, like pretty much that's all you need for skilled living as a musician.
Yep.
Assuming you have a mommy somewhere in the mix,
Yeah, you need that. And then once they start coming on the tour bus and, everybody's on the same bus, that creates more problems, I'm sure.
Yeah. And you can't even go in the ladies' room anymore for a deuce in the morning.
Right, that's true. Yeah, right. Well, you can't
fuck the whole thing up.
You can't drop a deuce on the bus anyway. You got to time it. It's weird. Like your schedule is completely off.
I remember, I think it was on the Peace Sells tour. We had a guy, this lighting director, Tony, and the bus driver's like, I'm not pulling over, shit in a bag. So sure enough, he's in the back, shitting in a bag. He comes running up to the front, open the window so we can throw his bag of shit out the window. It's like, talk about primitive living. I was raised better than this, like, what are we doing here?
Jim, did you grow up going to, like Johnny Z's place and going to see shows back in the day, seeing early Megadeth, early Metallica, all that stuff back in New Jersey?
Yeah, because I grew up in Old Bridge, New Jersey, and that's where Johnny Z was. And he had a record store at a flea market, Rock and Roll Heaven. So me and my friends would hang out there every Friday night. He'd bring in these new import records. And he's like, I'm going to start booking bands. And then he brought the Metallica No Life to Leather cassette. He started selling that at his store because I'm going to bring these guys to the East Coast. These guys are going to be big. I'm managing them. And those guys, Metallica was just hanging around. Dave actually was still in the band, Mustaine, at the time when they brought him over.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like a 17-year-old kid at the time. And I remember, I was friends with Johnny because he lived like a mile away. And I remember he called me up because Metallica was staying at his house. They just had a baby, him and Marcia. And Metallica was just sleeping on the floor. He's like, they didn't shower for like a week. And he's like, listen, man, can you pick these guys up? Me and my wife need a break. He goes, just take them to the mall. Here's some money. Take them to go get something to eat. We need a break from them. So I wound up picking up my mom's car. Dave, Cliff, Lars, and James. I took them to a local mall. We walked around. And then I took them to Burger King. My girlfriend worked at Burger King. I brought these slobs in there. They were drunk at like 2 p.m. and shit. She was so embarrassed. We sat in that burger. But I was around. The Metallica would play these little clubs, these little ice skating rinks, and these, so they were always around. So we saw all the shows and stuff. So I didn't get to see Megadeth that early though, because at that time, like a couple weeks later, they fired Dave, and then they went to record their first record. So.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just out there doing the film premiere for Nick Menza, and I was hanging with Mike Schnapp, and he was, as we were driving, we were actually filming. There's a new documentary about New Jersey metal coming out. You might be in it. I don't know. You might be in it.
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, we were driving to the studio, and Schnapp goes, hey, today was Kirk Hammett's very first show in Metallica 42 years ago. And that would have been, April, what day was that? The
8/3.
It was last Thursday, so it would have been April 17th. They said Dave's last show would have been April 11th at Lemoore. They sent him home on the 12th, brought Kirk out, and then his first show would have been on April 17th, 1983. So all this factual information just driving past the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey,
The gym I work at, it's a Crunch gym. That used to be a roller skating rink, and that's where I saw Metallica. Metallica, Raven, and Anvil was the bill.
Oh, wow.
And I tell people I work out when I go, Metallica played it. Like, no, they didn't. It's a freaking Crunch gym now. The Crunch gym. Metallica played here. It was there.
So, hey, everybody. David and Josh here, and just want to let you know about Rockabilia, our new partners here on the show. And you can visit them and enter David10 for 10% off on any of your purchases. So some cool stuff they have there, Josh.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome company. I mean, if you're of my generation of the we go to the magazine aisle, and when it was a print magazine, and Rockabilia was in every Metal Edge and Metal Maniacs and whatever else, and you would circle every Megadeth t-shirt you wanted, or Metallica or Slayer or whatnot. So super pumped to have Rockabilia on with the David Ellefson Show. And just a few things. They've got over 500,000 items over at rockabilia.com, including staples like the Master of Puppets shirts, Rest in Peace shirts. They do limited edition exclusive drops each month. And the one thing that they wanted to stress was everything is 100% authentic, no bootlegs over there at rockabilia.com. So that's obviously a plus there too.
Cool. So the money goes where it's supposed to go. So, all right, excellent. All right, so check it out. Rockabilia, David 10 for 10% off. Check it out, rockabilia.com.
I remember Johnny Z in that phone call. He goes, "Listen, Lars just opened our wedding champagne that we were saving. Please get these guys out of the house. They were looking for anything to drink."
Dave was saying how they made tomato sandwiches, meaning 2 tomatoes with some meat in it, no bread, right? Like really a tomato sandwich. Like that's how poor they were, So,
but then there's those guys, the Old Bridge Metal Militia, Rock and Ray, Dill, and Metal Joe, whatever. They were a little older than us, so Johnny Z said, then they had a house, like a big party house. So Metallica wound up staying there in the same town.
Yeah.
But I remember my friend, this guy, Ray Dill, he's part of the Old Bridge Metal Militia. He was trying to sell his original house where Metallica stayed at. It was on the market for like a year and a half, and he couldn't sell it. And people kept coming and coming like that. He was getting frustrated. And some guy showed up with his wife and a new baby. They're looking for a house, and the guy was wearing a Metallica shirt. And the guy goes, Ray's like, "You're a Metallica fan?" He's like, "Oh, huge. They're my favorite band." He goes, "Metallica used to stay here. I'm Rock and Ray from Old Bridge Metal Militia." Like, really? He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Let me show you something." He went in the bathroom. He goes, "See that toilet? James Hetfield puked in there, and it's still the same toilet." The guy put the house on the spot. Well,
selling points. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was always told by my realtor, if you walk into a house, you get 75% of what you want. That's probably the right house. So that was the selling point, right?
that was the selling point. James puked in that toilet.
That's awesome, man. Well, cool. Well, look, I'm gonna let Josh finish it up with the. I know you got to get running here, but Josh always kind of closes the show with his question of the day or question of the career.
Right.
So, take it away.
Just quickly, man. When was the last time Eminem prank called you?
Let's see, probably about 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, from like 2003 to 2008, he would prank call me all the time. I did a bunch of stuff with him. We did the music awards for MTV because he was a fan of Crank Anchors and that character. I did special ed. I went out to Detroit, did some calls with him, and he had my number, and he would call and pretend he was special ed, the character I did. And it would come up private, but I knew it was him because I knew how he did it. But I would never tell him it was him. I'd pretend like, I'm like, "Who is this? This is a terrible," because I didn't want to go, "Hey, I know," because I want him to keep calling me. Like maybe sometime he want to talk, But he would just do the impression and then just hang up. And I'm like, I know it's him.
Is that where you got the idea to do your crank calls, or was that something?
No, I was doing it before, actually. I was doing them a little time before, and then I got hired on that Crank Angus show for my prank calls. And then Eminem took a liking to him, and his daughter used to watch it. And he liked the character I did. And next thing I know, I was doing calls with him and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, where can everybody find all your stuff? Just so
my website, jimflorentine.com, and Instagram at Jim Florentine. And my podcast comes out every Monday. Everybody is awful.
Got it. Very good.
My last comedy special, You Can't Please Them All, is on Amazon Prime, along with like the other three. And then they're also on that Tubi TV.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Tubi's great. Yep.
Tubi's great.
Super good. Yeah. It kind of gets everything out there. And well, that's awesome. Jim, hey, dude, thanks for checking in with us, man. That was really great. Thanks for coming on the show. We just launched this here a couple of months ago, so it's really great to have all of our friends in the neighborhood stop by and check in. So, and I'll be definitely paying attention to the Jim Florentine show on Sirius XM now that I'm home for a few weeks.
Oh, cool. Yeah, man, it's always good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, I know. It's
I was out of town last week when you did the premiere with the movie. I would have went.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, the premiere was really good. I hit a few of you guys, you in particular, and Don, and Eddie and everybody, just to see who was around. But yeah, it really went great. It was nice to do a couple of, the one on the West Coast and then the one out on the East Coast. And, a different feeling just because, LA had, of course, Nick's friends and his family and everybody was there. Jersey didn't have that component, but it was interesting how it was just as impactful, just sort of the fun of it, the levity from it, but also the heaviness of it, so it was really cool. I saw who came out was Metal Mike, who from Halford's band. I haven't seen him in a while. I love him. He's from Poland, but lives in the Jersey area there. So it was great to see him, and got to see Frank White and a bunch of the boys from the hood, so
Nice.
it was great. So really appreciate it. So
awesome, man.
All right, man. Well, look, be safe out on the road. We'll our paths will cross soon, and